Boba Fett, the fearsome bounty hunter that instilled fear across the galaxy. But who is this lethal hunter for hire? Boba Fett is the clone son of the Mandalorian bounty hunter Jango Fett. Being an incredibly respected warrior, Jango was hired by Count Dooku or Darth Tyrannus to be the genetic template of the clone army. Jango agreed to this under two conditions, the first of which being considerable payment, and the other being an unaltered clone for himself. This meant that Jango's personal clone would not go through the generic process the Republic's clones would, such as behaviour modification or accelerated growth. This essentially just made the clone a perfectly normal child, which Jango took as his son, naming him Boba. Since Boba didn't have any of the standard modifications, he matured far slower than other clones. Boba received a Mandalorian upbringing similar to Jango's, being trained personally by his father in survival skills, martial skills, and becoming proficient in a range of weapons, all whilst living on Kamino with his father overseeing the Republic Army's construction. After Kenobi discovered the clone army and the bounty hunter, Jango chose to flee with Boba to rendezvous with his employers on Geonosis. After a brief engagement with the Jedi, Boba and Jango arrived on Geonosis, where Obi-Wan, Anakin Skywalker, and Padme Amidala were captured by the Separatists and sentenced to death in the arena. Both Jango and Boba were present at the Jedi and Senator's execution. However, when a Jedi strike force arrived headed by Mace Windu, Jango was forced into the fray. Here, Jango Fett was cut down by Mace Windu shortly before the clone army arrived to aid the Jedi, marking the beginning of the Clone Wars. As the Battle of Geonosis spread far from the arena, Boba found his father's decapitated helmet and vowed revenge against Mace Windu, the Jedi who had felled Jango. Later in the Clone Wars, after Boba had come into possession of his father's old ship, Slave One, Boba teamed up with a group of other bounty hunters, including Bossk and Aurra Sing, in order to seek revenge for Jango's death. However, the other hunters were likely in it for the enormous bounty Dooku and the other Separatists would pay for a Jedi Council member's head. Boba, being genetically identical to clones, posed as a clone cadet aboard the Endurance Republic cruiser, where Mace Windu was based. Fett then detonated explosives on the main reactor, which would destroy the entire ship. He was then picked up by his team aboard Slave One. With the survivors of the wreck, including Windu and Skywalker, stranded on the planet Vancor, Fett and his team attempted to hunt the Jedi down by planting explosives around other survivors they'd taken hostage. Although the explosives did trap Skywalker and Windu under rubble, Skywalker's droid R2-D2 managed to escape Vancor and return to Coruscant to seek help from the Jedi, who sent a strike team to rescue the two Jedi. Aurra Sing chose to take over the operation, believing Boba was not going to do what needed to be done. Rounding up the remaining hostages, they attempted to force Windu to confront them. Eventually, the Jedi managed to apprehend Boba, who gave up the location of the hostages after the pirate Hondo Ohnaka convinced him his father would want him to do the honourable thing. Boba was sent back to Coruscant along with Bossk, where he met Windu for the last time. Here, Boba apologised for the damage he caused, but vowed that he would never forgive Windu for the death of his father. Thankfully for Boba, Bossk, the Trandoshan bounty hunter, put Boba under his protection in prison, which ensured that his time there was relatively comfortable, with few prisoners who would dare test the temper of this lethal Trandoshan. One example of this is when Bossk started a full-scale prison riot when Boba, and who he thought was Rakada Hadrim, got into a fight about a stolen bounty. However, shortly after this, Boba left prison. After leaving prison, Boba chose to follow in his father's footsteps and create the Syndicate of Bounty Hunters, along with Bossk, Dengar, and other bounty hunters, using Dantooine as a base of operations, even teaming up with a Sith apprentice, Asajj Ventress, for a short while. Boba and the Syndicate's success led him to becoming an infamous bounty hunter that always saw the job through, even getting the reputation of disintegrating his victims.
You are free to use any methods necessary, but I want them alive. No disintegrations.
As you wish.
By the time the Republic had been dissolved by the Empire, Boba had become regularly under the employ of crime lord Jabba the Hutt as one of his most efficient hunters. Boba had also taken possession of a set of Mandalorian armour, much of which was taken from his father's original set. This was particularly important to Boba, as it kept the idea of Mandalorian warriors alive, despite the fact that most of them had been wiped out long ago. One of Boba's most covert jobs was shortly after the Battle of Yavin and the destruction of the first Death Star. After Darth Vader had sensed Skywalker during the battle, he was curious to find out the identity of the boy. When visiting Jabba the Hutt, he demanded that Jabba lend him his most efficient bounty hunters. Here, Fett was tasked with finding the identity of the pilot. After searching Tatooine high and low for the identity of the boy, and killing almost everyone who gave him information, he was told that the pilot's name was Skywalker. From here, Boba travelled to Ben Kenobi's house in the Wastes, and awaited for Skywalker to show up, which he did. During a brief scuffle between Skywalker and Fett was mysteriously knocked unconscious when a small box flew across the room and hit him in the head. In this time, Luke fled Tatooine and the fearsome bounty hunter. Fett returned to Vader empty-handed. Well, almost. Fett revealed the name of the boy, Skywalker. Little did he know that he'd just told Darth Vader that he had a son. Fett would later find himself working for Vader again whilst tracking the Millennium Falcon, where he ended up collecting the bounty for Jabba on Han Solo. After the attempt to have Solo return from the Hutt went bad, Jabba had all his prisoners fed to the Sarlacc. However, when Luke Skywalker and his allies were freed at their execution, Boba was accidentally pushed into the Sarlacc pit by a blinded Han Solo to be digested over thousands of years. However, what happened after this is unknown. Some say that Fett escaped the pit and continued his job as a bounty hunter. But only time will tell if this tenacious hunter will turn up again, ready to collect another bounty.